Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa Life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The spa in Spa Life, the SPA, is for Seek Power Always, that internal power within you. And I'm so thrilled to introduce to you our special guest today, Jaime Taets. She has spent 13 years in a large corporate environment in a variety of leadership roles, and she's currently the CEO of Keystone Group International, a firm focused on leadership development and organizational strategy and growth. Jaime, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Diane.
So great to have you here because you've lived and traveled globally and you strongly believe in strong leadership as the foundation of any healthy growth of business. Tell me how you arrived at that.
You know, it's been part of my global, like you said, my global experience. I worked for one of the largest privately held organizations in the world. And so I got the opportunity in my 20s and early 30s to do a lot of global travel. And as I looked at our different business units and across cultures, you know, the thing that really stood out to me is the businesses that were the most successful were the ones that had strong leadership, as I call, throughout the ranks. And I just strongly believe that leaders are not a box on the org chart, that you can lead from the front, middle, or back of the room, and it really teaching people what that looks like.
I love that. And, you know, you and I have had some discussions around like power and what that is and your internal power and particularly your superpowers, because I know a lot of times, particularly for women, with all the things they have going on in the world, they tend to leak their power. And I know that you love to have like real discussions about how you can utilize your strengths and values to lead others. You know, tell us a little bit about how you came about using superpowers and how do you utilize them with your clients?
Yeah, so superpowers for me is just another way of talking about those innate things that you have that other people may or may not have. And being in corporate, we've all done, you know, the many assessments and talked about our strengths. And so people understand the word strengths. But what I've realized is when you talk about them in superpowers, it makes them more yours, not something that you read in a book that you share with everyone else. And so what I'm trying to do with our clients and our leaders is help them understand how they can be the best version of themselves and reach that next level of success according to what their superpowers are. Because I think, like you talk about specifically women, is we see in social media makes it even worse. I see it in all of my clients is we see other people's success, we see other people's superpowers, and we assume we have to have that to get to whatever that next level of success is for us. And the answer is actually, creates a really miserable existence because we don't have those superpowers. And that's not necessarily what we want. We have to define our own and we have to define it within what we have. And it just makes life much more fulfilling. So whether it's a corporate career, it's a stay-at-home mom, it's the same thing.
Right, right. Well, this is such an important distinction. And you know, I've been having some conversations lately about what if it was easy? I mean, so many times, you know, we make it more difficult for ourselves because we think we have to do it a certain way that really maybe isn't in alignment with who we are and what we're doing. But I think what's so brilliant about standing in, you know, your superpower, which is your ultimate strength of what that is, not only is that's why you're uniquely here, but that's what you excel at. And that's what's actually easy for you. So kind of following that path of being in flow with that just seems like the most logical way to go and to live your life in a way that's more in alignment, and you're then able to serve on a deeper level as well. So I think it's so important to really be conscious about this, that you're actually designing your life and you're not living by default. What are some of the ways that you consciously design your life?
Yeah, some of the ways that I really, all the time, I'm looking at my life, whether it's business or personal, is around my values. So I have a very strong values system, and this isn't moral values that I'm talking about. These are core values that are aligned around my strengths and how I serve. So I am always looking for people to be in my circle, to be in my tribe, to be surrounding me, whether it's personal or professional, that hold similar values to me. And I think where a lot of us go wrong is we feel like we need that person, even if they don't serve us, and vice versa. And we aren't kind of always staying true to who we are. And like you said about, that's really how we show up. And we all know those moments where we've interacted with somebody that didn't feel authentic. And It's not because that person was not a good person. It's because they were trying to be something they weren't. And when we're all in that authentic space, that's really where we serve people the best and we get real success. That's what I believe the definition of real success is, just being in that authentic space. So I'm constantly working on that as well, is how to show up authentically, not chase things that we shouldn't be chasing for our business, not do things that we don't need to do, but just be who we are and be okay with that and build from there.
Right. And I love that. And to take that foundation of values, we discuss values a lot here on this show because, really even having that as a reflection on your calendar, because if you say something like, I value family, but it's not on there, it's like, how much do you really value that? And so really looking at the people that you're spending time with and leading from that place, I think is so powerful. And I know that you are very intentional in what you do and that you're very focused. Tell us a little bit about how you kind of balance between personal and business growth strategy.
Yeah. So I actually just did a podcast on this a few weeks ago personally, because it was really hitting me, and that's the way I work sometimes, is it's just something I have to share. But I think we all struggle with this. And my struggle has been since my early days in corporate and my travel and having young children and being away. And it was really the primary reason I left, because it just wasn't serving me in the way that I knew I needed for where my family was at that time. But the one thing I do coach a lot of people on is I really hate the word balance, first off. And I know a lot of people use it. There's nothing wrong with the word, but I really think it's a choice. And there's no such balance. When I think of balance, I think of a teeter-totter, and you're standing in the middle trying to make them both work, and it doesn't, it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. So what I work with people on is saying, let's make good choices. And what we have to give ourselves grace on is, I'm leaving on a trip this afternoon. That's why I'm broadcasting from my home office, is I'm making that choice because I love my client, right? I have to travel sometimes, but I'm making that choice. And I also share with my family why I'm making that choice. Mm-hmm. And then I'll take Friday off, hopefully part of Friday, and be with my family. And so I think it's just us finding and making the right choices for that time. There are going to be periods in your life where there's something going on personally. We've all had that, sickness, divorce, something else going on in your life where that has to take precedence no matter what. And the same thing happens for our career. Is there's those points in our career where you're like, all right, it's going to be a little hair on fire for the next month, but this is worth it to me. Right. And you're making that conscious choice, I think changes your perspective on balance, and you truly can kind of balance it when you make the right choices.
Right. Well, that is just really powerful because, listeners, lean in on this because, we've had a lot of discussions around balance, right? Because it's like this kind of, I don't know, just like this elusive thing that people are chasing on this balance, knowing that each day it can shift depending on what our priorities are. And being at choice is such a powerful way of saying that, because so many times we feel like, well, life just happens and we don't have that choice. However, when we do really, step into that choice and decide, hey, today is going to be, a full day. This is what's going to happen. But then, maybe you're not having balance in that day, but maybe it's more about harmony, right? It's like how all these parts actually work together, and how is it like your perfect recipe that works for you. And it may not work for your neighbor or your client, but what works for you and your family, I think is a really important thing to do. Now, I know there's something powerful about 120 days. How do you utilize that in your plan?
Yeah, we really focus on, we do long-term strategic planning, really helping people think about where are they going long-term. We need that vision 5 to 10 years out. It's hard for a lot of people because their response is so much can change in 5 to 10 years. And I agree with you, but we also have control over so much that can change if we're intentional about what that looks like. But we know that we can't set goals that far out. I feel like even goals a year out sometimes are important for people to think about, but it's really hard for them to plan because it's, in January you get really excited. Here's where I want my business to be. I'm sure you see this a lot and then, they get to September and they have the, moment of, it's not going to happen because I just got in my business for the last 6 to 8 months and I haven't been working on really progressing it forward. And so what we do is we break the world down into those 1 year, 5 to 10 years out, 1 year goals, but then we force you into quarterly cycles. And the reason being is that 120-day cycle is a natural human, like proven scientific energy momentum that happens. And so every 120 days, we get kind of run out of energy, and we need that re-energization into our lives and into our business. And so when we break the year down into 120-day increments, we're able to show progress. We're able to be agile and say, you know what, I thought that was going to work. That's not going to work. Let's adjust and pivot what we should be doing. And each quarter we get that opportunity to look back and celebrate how far we've come and really dig in and say, here's where we need to get in the next quarter. And so I just believe that 120-day cycle helps people with accountability and really moving their business forward versus hoping that things happen. Is we've got to be intentional about them.
Right, right. And I think that whole 120, day cycle is it's so brilliant, right? Because it allows us to really get clear on what we want to focus on at that point. And even though we have that bigger goal in mind, we can look and see, okay, I can do anything in a concentrated period of time. And then at the end of it, it's like you can, Monday morning quarterback it, right? And go, hey, what worked, what didn't work? It's a great time to pivot, right? Instead of just kind of moving through the year and waking up at the end and going, what happened here, right? So
Yes.
To be that intentional, but then also to let ourselves go into the natural flow of life. I mean, it's one of the reasons why, we have seasons and, we may react differently in the summer than we do in the spring. And, why wouldn't our business and our life be in that same way? Do you look at these goals, not just in your business, but also in your personal life too, to utilize that whole focus time?
Absolutely. I believe it's not kind of work and personal, it's life.
Yes.
And it's all tied together. When I leave the office and shut the door, it doesn't shut off, unfortunately, and vice versa, as I'm not shutting off family when I go to the office. And so we've got to look at all of them. And that's what I find a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners is that's what gets in the way is they don't plan for both. I do a lot of life mapping exercises to even get them to be able to set the right goals for their business is we've got to look at everything else. Sometimes it's their health. Right? Sometimes it's their family. There are a lot of other things that can get in the way, and we've got to be looking at all of them and make sure the goals we're setting for our business are in alignment and not complete misalignment from the goals that we need to set personally.
Right.
Because
right.
Otherwise, we can set the goal, but we're not going to get there.
Right. Definitely. Well, I think it's also important for our listeners because I think I don't want to make sure that they're not mishearing something where it's like, everything's kind of thrown in the air and we're dealing with all at the same time. I mean, you can address all of it, but you also have to be focused on where you are in the moment. And I know particularly for working moms, to have what's happening at home, coming when they're focusing at work and where they're at work, they're thinking about home. How do you help distinguish where, yes, we address all of it, but when you're in the moment to be present on the focus, or the activity at hand? How do you kind of balance that for yourself? And how is it that you stay focused on what you need to in the moment?
Yeah. And I'm not going to say I'm perfect at this, but this is something I think that is a constant struggle and it's never kind of over, right? You're never good at it because then something else is going to come into your life. So I've had clients that have set their business up, their business is really rocking and rolling, and then they've got cancer or an illness that hits their family, and it takes everything off. But what we tell them is that the plan is there for a reason so that you know what needs to be done and what didn't get done so that we can carry that forward. So just because we don't know what might happen personally, professionally, it doesn't mean we don't plan.
Okay.
And
yeah.
That's the focus is you've got to focus on some type of a plan, knowing that, any plan you lay out, there's going to be things that throw a wrench in it. But if we really are clear and focused, when that wrench comes, when that issue or obstacle comes, we're able to adjust to it and change our focus. And that's another thing that we do is we don't just lay the plan with our clients, is we actually do a full analysis of what are those issues and obstacles that could happen. What are the risks that could come into this, and would that impact what we've got laid out, so that we're consciously aware of that and what we're going to do if that does happen.
Right. Well, I think it's almost more important to have not only just the what ifs, but here's the plan that needs to happen. And then at the end to basically have these as indicators of what actually got completed and what either maybe needs to get delegated or is not necessary or needs to be carried over, or maybe why we didn't hit what we hit, so that there's actually something to reference to. Because if you don't have any of that there, then you've got nothing, right? You've got nothing to move forward on and kind of have that platform to move to the next level. which reminds me about the whole, conversation around busyness. This drives me crazy because I think it's like the new addiction of, busy versus choice. And I know you talk a lot about the power of no. How do you use this yourself, and how do you help clients with really, utilizing that power of no?
Yeah. I look at no as I say, a complete sentence.
Yes.
And I think we have to, as women specifically, is we are people pleasers, right? We want to serve everybody. We want to make sure everybody's happy and they're where they need to be, and that, everything is working. And it comes at an absence of us, doing the things that really fulfill us. And so you talk about your calendar, as we do an assessment with our clients to really do an inventory. I call it an energy inventory, but I want you to look over a 2-day period and tell me when your energy was super high, meaning you were like vibrating, that feeling. You come out of a meeting, you come off a call, and you are just filled. Your blood pressure, heart's beating fast. What are those things that you were doing when that happened? And on the inverse, what are those things when you hung up and were like, I hate what I'm doing? Like, you have those moments, of breakdown. What are those things?
Right.
I think knowing that energy flow and what's giving you energy and what's sucking energy from you is really important, because you have to start saying no to those things that are sucking energy, whether it's a person, whether it's a commitment, and it could even be a volunteer commitment. It could be something where you're doing good for the community or for your business, but it doesn't give you energy, then it's not good for anybody. It's taking energy from something else.
Right. This is so key because, there's so many things. And again, when we talk about the calendar, is that if you look at your calendar and there's so many things that you feel like you have to do, it's like that energy doesn't really get you through the day or the quarter, or just really be inspired by your life. And so really looking at what is it that you get to go. And I love where you talk about having, energy around that, right? Because those things that inspire you, that's where you're more in alignment with your values, that you're on track, you're actually doing your life's purpose. If every day is filled with those things that drain you, who wants to be part of that, right?
Well, and what we don't realize is when we say yes to all of those things, even the things we don't want to do, is we're essentially saying no to the things we do want to do, because we don't do them at our best and we let people down. And I'm guilty of this because I just nonprofit boards, and I get asked to do a lot of things, and who's going to say no to right? You feel like guilty saying no to something like that. But what I realized is by saying yes to that, all the other things I had committed to, I was kind of halfway saying yes, because I couldn't give them what they needed, and that wasn't fair to anybody. So that can also become your reputation if you say yes to too many things, is you dilute your impact, and then people start not feeling like they can count on you for the things you actually say yes to.
Right. That's a good distinction. And it actually reminds me, I was just reading, one of my favorite resources is a book called Essentialism. And one of the things it was talking about was all the different ways that you can say a powerful no. And one of it is, I think particularly as women, we feel like if somebody asks something of us that we need to respond right away in the moment. But to actually give yourself pause and, balance it against what it is, other things that you're doing, and to say, hey, I need to check my calendar. I need to see if this resonates with me, to really just not feel that pressure to have to actually answer in the moment, and to give yourself space. And I think it's really important to give ourselves space with this. And, I'm really trying to set more into this for myself as well, because, there's a lot of things that I can pack into a day, and giving myself more space not only allows me to be more in line with my yes, but it actually allows me to be more present with it, right? If we're just moving from one thing to the next, it may not really align with the bigger picture of what I'm doing, versus just, checking off the box, versus really stepping into an intentional life that really supports us. And, I'd love to know, how is it that you incorporate your, first of all, what is your superpower? Let's just, dive into that a little bit. And how does that come into play with what values you're using and how you're saying no? How's kind of the recipe all come together?
Yeah. So, and this has been a journey for me. So I believe you have a number of superpowers. And so when we say superpowers, we don't mean like I can fly or I'm invisible, right? It's those things that, I would love those as well. And you be able to fly. That's the thing that would get me places faster and manage my balance. But my superpowers there's a couple of primary ones that as I look back on my career, and again, this wasn't like an overnight thing that I realized, but my first one is empathy. And so I've always had this strong empathy, and it's what really led my corporate career, in that I was in kind of people strategy, understanding the impact of changes and how are people going to be able to absorb them and, and feel engaged. And so that empathetic superpower allows me to kind of sit in someone else's seat and look at the world from their perspective and say, how might this feel if we do this, or if we communicate this, or if we change this? And so that's my superpower. And it's interesting, that's that along with my maximizer superpower. So I have an innate ability to understand what role someone should be in. I mean, I have coached, not that this was what I intended to do, but I've coached so many people to leave their current roles and take a 180-degree turn in their careers. And it's not because that's what they were that wasn't the intention when they started coaching with me, but I have this way of really understanding their strengths and saying, is that really maximizing their strengths? So we call it maximizer. But how this plays out in my core values for my business is our core values are really around driving impact, making change happen, and wanting to work with people that are ready to change, right? They don't want it to be another year like it was last year. They want to be better and they want to grow and change. And so empathy and maximizer both play into the entire business model that I've built, because every day I get to use them. And that's the piece for me that has really allowed me to come into a whole different level on my business and that's what your listeners is, once you find those, spending 80% of your time in those superpowers is going to make every day more fulfilling for you.
Right. Now, as far as like with these particular like strengths and superpowers, is this something that, you came into in recent years? Is it something you always knew you had? Did you have to kind of discover that? Like, I'm sure there's some people listening going, well, I'm not really sure what my superpower is, or they kind of have an inclination, but they're not using it. How is it that you discovered it? And then how do you help people discover theirs?
Yeah. So it's a great question about how you discover it. And this is another thing that I think women don't do well until someone kind of exposes it to us, is mine was discovered. It was always there. When I look back at my corporate life and saw the things I did and the career progression I had, it was like, that was why, because that's what I was good at and I was in the right place for that opportunity. And so it is discovered. And part of the energy journaling and some of that work that we do, we also have assessments that we use to just help you get to a certain, words to put on it, because sometimes that's the hardest thing. But once you understand what it is, you can very easily do the energy mapping to say, oh yeah, that's because I was using that superpower. And so for me, it has been a kind of a natural progression. And it probably the last 4 to 5 years, I have finally stopped apologizing for them. And that's the thing that I think most of us do, is we push them down. We're not in a role that's using them right now, so we have to pretend like they're not there, and we just don't serve them. And I had to stop apologizing for being really empathetic. I had to stop apologizing for having that thing that I didn't know what it was, but I tried as a female in corporate America to just say, well, I don't really want to, I don't want to stand out too much in my power. And I knew what it was. I just didn't know how to use it in a way that wouldn't seem arrogant, right? I think we all have trouble talking about those strengths that we have without feeling arrogant.
Jamie, this is really huge that to really come into that is really coming into a place of your power, of really claiming that, because I think there's a lot of women where it's like they know what they're doing. There's almost like this pretending that I'm not as brilliant as I am, right? Because the areas that you just nail it, right? This is like, you've got this. And, to diminish, your light or who you are or your strengths or all of that, that's doing a disservice to other people. So I think this is so important for you to be exposing this aspect of people really claiming those strengths and who they are, and to step into it, whether they're using them or not, to at least start acknowledging them.
And I think it's important as well as women that, and this is what I intentionally do all the time, is to really recognize other women's superpowers. Yes. And to say, I see that showing up and I don't have that. Like, I love that you have that. And I think recognizing in a way, because many of us just assume everybody else has this. Like, this isn't anything special. And the answer is, that's not true. We have different things. And I think the more we can build a tribe around us that has those complementary strengths and superpowers, that's where our businesses really level up, where our personal lives, go to the next level, and our fulfillment does, because we're balancing the people around us with other strengths that we don't have. But until we can really own ours, it's hard for us to recognize that in other people.
That is so true because, I've always been like an organized person, and I always know like these super fast, easy hacks about how to be more in flow with your day and how you can shift your calendar. And it's like, I thought, doesn't everyone do that? Like, because this is
No.
like the easiest way to do that, right? It's just like, that's what works. And it was really until I started working with clients and finding out, whoa, I can't really go into this deeper area till we have some basic things that I thought people had, right? And so we can't really assume that people know those things. And that's why we have those, is so that we can share those gifts with other people. So I think it's really important for people to really claim what it is that is their gifts and their superpower, that's part of why they're here, right? To do those things and to share those with other people. So I love that you incorporate this as part of your business. There's definitely a very business corporate aspect of what you do and in your company, but there's also a flow and there's an intention, and also, using like the universe for your goals. I mean, so how is it that you really utilize having those like clear-cut focused goals that you have, but also being in flow with kind of the universal intelligence? How do you kind of marry those things together?
That's a great question. The way we look at it is when you have a really good goal and plan set and you're intentional, it actually allows you, and you break it into the 120 days, I believe it allows you to be present and pay attention to what's happening day in and day out and see those doors that open. So the analogy that I give to clients is, think about it like a marathon, right? Your goal is to finish the marathon and still feel somewhat good. But if you spend the entire 26.2 miles worrying about crossing the finish line, it's going to be a painful run. I mean, running coaches would tell you, you have to be focusing on 500 yards in front of you. Because if you're focusing on the end, it's exhausting. You see how far you have to go. Mm-hmm. And so the same thing applies to the way we help people plan, is looking at that 120 days, looking at the first couple miles or even the first mile that I have to go allows me to actually pay attention to what's passing me and what I'm running past and be present in that moment, because I'm not worried. I know I'm going to get to the finish line because I'm running this first mile.
Right.
And so that's where I believe the universe comes in, because when you're in it like that and you have the confidence to know you're going to hit the 1-year goal, but you don't have to sit and stare at it, you can focus on kind of what's in front of you. You're going to see the doors open. You're going to see the people that are put in your path that were supposed to be put in your path. It just makes you so much more present to what you need at that moment. And I think so many of us, when we're not doing that, it's 100 miles an hour on a freeway, which is exactly what you talk about, right? That kind of operating in emergency mode, right, is you're not noticing any of those signs and things that the universe is putting in your way until it literally knocks you over at some point.
That's a great analogy to really, of course we all want to finish the race, but, that's kind of a part of like, enjoying the ride along the way, right? I mean, having those nuances and having those little tweaks and those things that actually make it enjoyable to get there, that it's not just about, being there, it's about getting there and enjoying the process along the way. So I think that's really an important, analogy and a way to live life. And, that kind of reminds me, one of the things to talk about, looking at your surroundings and how things support you. One of the things I love to ask my guests is, our environments really impact us in how we experience our day and our life. And we have a different experience, whether we're in our bedroom or the kitchen or family room. What's your favorite room in your home and why?
So you're going to laugh. So we have 4 children, all middle school and high school age. And so one of my favorite rooms in the house is we have what they call a sport court attached to our house. So an indoor basketball hoop and room that's got really tall ceilings. And that's right now in this season of my life is my favorite room. The reason being is because all winter long, if we're not outside, all winter long, we are in there every night playing volleyball, basketball together. Even though those aren't even sports the kids play, whether they do or not, we're in there as a family. There's 6 of us, so we make a perfect team, 3 and 3. And that's where we're at all the time. And so for me, it's health, right? It's showing them the health side of being active. And it's also showing them that it's not so bad to hang out with your family, because I think those are crucial years. And it reminds me too, is that's my balance, is finding that dedicated time where there's no electronics and there's nothing else going on. So right now, that's my favorite room in the house.
I love that. I love the intentionality around that, because I think so much what makes a room is what are the activities that happen in there and the connections that are made. I think that that is the difference between, a house versus a home, and really feeling that connection. I think the activities that, we do with our family and our close friends, I mean, they matter, right? Those are the foundations of why we do what we do. So I love that. And I love that you have that connection with your family. And, speaking of connection, I know that, our listeners are going to stay connected with you. I know you have like a free gift for them. Can you tell us what that is and how they can stay connected with you?
Yeah, so we would love to connect. I also have a podcast called Superpower Success. So the focus is really to help people understand and figure out those things that they're stuck around and get them unstuck. So Diane has been on it. Just amazing people that come on and really help us shift our paradigm and think about things differently. So would love to have people engage in that way and see if that can help. I think that's a great avenue. And then from our business standpoint, I mean, we would love to have a 30-minute coaching conversation if there are people who are trying to build a business, trying to even build their personal lives and make a shift. We'd love to be able to offer a 30-minute kind of coaching consultation to help them through that and understand our services and how that works. So they can reach out to me personally, Facebook or LinkedIn, Jaime Taets, or they can go to our website and contact us through there at KeystoneGroupIntl.com is probably the easiest way.
Okay, perfect. And we're going to put all of those links in the show notes so that people can connect with you and be able to have that. And I just want to thank you for taking this time to share your wisdom and how you're in it yourself and how you use that intentionality to really just live and thrive in your life and have the impact in other people's lives as well. So thank you for sharing that wisdom.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, listeners, in this conversation, when we talk about, spa life, and you may be wondering, like this conversation that Jaime and I are having, what are the gaps for you? What are the strengths that you're having? And what are the things that you maybe need to shore up? And I also have a free gift for you at liferesetquiz.com. That'll also be in the show notes. You want to make sure that you utilize that, lifereset.com, to see where you're succeeding and where you need to have some support. And, Jaime and I would love to both stay in contact with you, and whether or not you see this on Facebook Live or on YouTube or any place that you see it, make sure that you put the comments in there. What was the aha? What was it that really supported you, and what are the questions that you have for us? We're here to serve you and help you, and want to be in community with you to make sure that in any areas that are not working for you, that we can help you in answering those questions. So definitely connect with us. Make sure you subscribe to the show and really stay connected to the community, because that's what makes the difference, is when we all come together and support each other in all of our different strengths and superpowers to be able to have that happen. So I just want to thank you for your most valuable resources, your time to be here with us. And as always, live your spa life. Bye for now.